My fiancé wanted an open relationship. Despite us being 2 weeks away from our wedding, I canceled it because of this. 2 weeks before our wedding, she asked me to attend a therapy session with her. She had been seeing a therapist on her own and wanted me to come along to discuss everything before the wedding, ensuring we were completely honest with each other. It seemed a little strange to me. I thought we were already honest with one another, especially since we were about to get married. Besides, she had always been very secretive about her therapy sessions and rarely talked about them. I had never even met her therapist, so the invitation felt somewhat inappropriate. The day arrived and I went. Out of caution, I kept my phone on and recorded audio. My fiancé was already there, and I had to wait 20 minutes before being invited in. The therapist greeted me, shook my hand, and exchanged pleasantries. Then she said, "You're not at all like your fiancé described you." I think she was trying to compliment me. She then looked at my fiancé and said, "This might be harder than we thought." That put me on edge, but I'm a calm and level-headed person, so I didn't react. I just kept that awkward smile we all put on in uncomfortable situations. The therapist began to speak, delivering a little speech I won't even try to repeat. My fiancé took my hand as the therapist explained that we live in a modern world and that my fiancé wanted our marriage to be unconventional. I smiled, not fully understanding what the heck she meant. My mind raced to ideas about how she might be talking about equality in the marriage, not sacrificing her career, and so on, modern womanhood, feminism, and all that. No. What she was actually saying was that once we got married, she wanted the freedom to sleep with other men. A different, unconventional marriage. But she loved me very much and couldn't bear for me to have the same privileges because it would hurt her too much to know I found other women attractive, and that one of them might take me away from her. I let them talk. They were confident, likely buoyed by my lack of reaction and silence. Clearly, they had rehearsed this conversation. I asked the therapist, "Do you have a license?" Judging by her reaction, this was not the question she expected to hear first. She said yes. Then I asked her to explain to my fiancé why we would no longer be getting married, and why we were no longer a couple, starting at that moment. I wished them luck and left the office. Now I want to file a complaint against the therapist. I'm not sure whether I should complain to the clinic or the governing body that oversees therapists. I don't think their attempt to corner me was professional behavior, and I want her held accountable for her lack of professionalism. This session left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. To be clear, there would have been no positive outcome from this conversation. Even if my fiancé had suggested a fully open marriage, where I, too, could sleep with other women, my reaction would have been the same. That's not a marriage. It's a farce. It also occurred to me that she might have been cheating on me. Looking back with a clear mind, some things don't add up. So I've been a fool. I listened to the recording and still can't believe what was said. Anyway, I canceled the wedding. I'm a very calm person. I don't seek out arguments, which means I don't have conflicts or enemies. My life is based on principles and common sense. Perhaps this gave my ex-fiancée the false impression that she could walk all over me. But she's a fool if she thought that. After listening to the recording multiple times, I'm confident the therapist realized I wasn't at all like my fiancé had described me during their sessions, hence her comment about how this might be harder than we thought. Now that the wedding is off, people are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. How should I handle this? I'm certain my ex is trying to minimize the fallout, but I have the recording. If she pushes too far, I won't hesitate to share it. She's also been bombarding me with calls, mine, my best friends, and my brother's, saying things like, "We can fix this. I didn't understand what was being discussed at the session." And, "It was all the therapist's idea. I was against it." Her screams go unanswered. We were also planning to take out a loan for a house, but I canceled everything. I've essentially erased all our financial and other ties. Her latest excuse is that she shared her insecurities about our sexual history during therapy. I had significantly more partners than she did, and the therapist suggested leveling the playing field. Whether that's true or not, the therapist must be held accountable. Once I figure out where to report her and what to say, I'll take action. This post is mainly my reflection, but I'd also like to hear how you would handle friends and family's questions. My ex is definitely working to spin the situation, and I don't want to get dragged into a he said, she said mess. I have the recording, but I'm debating whether to share it with anyone. My ex doesn't know I have it. Internet searches and contacting 2 former patients, the therapist had less than stellar reviews. Some people were unhappy with her work, and through social media, we managed to connect with 2 of her former patients. They eagerly agreed to help once we explained the situation. Their stories were no better than mine. We compiled thick files containing statements from these 2 individuals, my own account of how my ex-fiancé changed after starting therapy, and a detailed recounting of my encounter with the therapist. Last Friday, I met with my parents. My ex-fiancé's parents were also invited to their home, and we had a conversation. My ex-fiancé was present too, and she revealed even more details, which we added to the report on the therapist. This week, we sent those letters. The clinic responded. They called our office on Thursday morning, likely to confirm whether this was a prank or a legitimate issue. We spoke with their lawyer, and when we confirmed that everything was real, we overheard someone in the background say, "There he is!" They assured us they were taking this matter very seriously. A colleague at work suggested the clinic might have received similar complaints before, but this was the first time the allegations were so well documented. In our letter, we also mentioned that we were reporting the matter to the American Psychological Association, which might have added pressure and prompted their quick response. I'm not sure how this story will end, but for me, I consider the matter closed. However, after speaking with the 2 former patients, I sincerely hope the therapist will at least be investigated because she seems to have an agenda. She also damaged their relationships. For reference, one of the former patients is a woman. Meeting with my ex-fiancée and her parents last Friday, my parents called me and asked me to come by after work. When I arrived, surprise, my ex-fiancée and her parents were also there. My first reaction upon seeing their car in the driveway was to leave. This meeting was supposed to happen on my terms, but she tried to take control of the situation. That wasn't going to happen. My ex-fiancée was waiting for me outside and looked amazing. If I had to present an ideal girlfriend to my parents, it would be the image she portrayed that day. She said they were there to talk to me and try to make things right. By they, she meant her parents. Either she hadn't told them what happened, or she gave them a version of events they didn't buy into. She had a diary with her, which she claimed she started before therapy and continued writing in until that very morning. She insisted I needed to read it to understand everything. I told her, "This isn't a book club." I wanted to go inside and get this circus started, but she begged for 10 minutes to talk before I spoke with her parents. She handed me the diary again and began crying. Eventually, my sister and her sister joined us, curious about what was happening. I took the diary, went inside, greeted everyone, and we moved to a secluded area in my parents' garden. My ex-fiancée quit her job due to stress, which led to a breakdown. Things escalated and didn't improve. She no longer sees that therapist and has started seeing another one. The focus of her previous therapy shifted entirely to our relationship, seemingly the therapist's main interest. She never told her parents why we broke up. Now, she attends therapy with a new, more reliable therapist, according to her emails. This therapist, a married older man, with a white beard resembling Freud, appears to be legitimate. Her offer to rebuild trust. My ex-fiancé proposed giving me complete control over her finances, devices, and movements to rebuild trust. I asked if she had cheated on me. She admitted she had the opportunity, but didn't go through with it. I believe her, but the idea of having the opportunity infuriated me. Why was she even in a position where such an opportunity existed? After a 10-minute conversation, we joined our families. I explained what happened during therapy and shared my stance. My ex-fiancé confirmed everything, which surprised me. Her father was brought to tears, her mother demanded explanations, and my ex-fiancé repeated her story of work stress, depression, a breakdown, and a therapist who blamed our relationship for all her problems. She offered me her diary to understand everything. I declined, saying I don't read personal diaries unless the author is a dead poet, a comment that didn't land well. It created tension, and I reluctantly promised to read it. The diary is now on my bedside table, untouched. I've checked it to confirm it was written over the past year. It's not a forgery. Still, I see no reason to read it. It feels like another tool for manipulation. Current status and reflection: we've known each other for 9 years, 5 of which we spent as a couple. Despite justified reasons for her behavior, returning to what we had seems impossible. My perception of her has fundamentally changed. While I still find her attractive, I recognize it's part of her calculated approach to win me back. I returned the diary via a work courier with a letter explaining my decision. Later that day, she came to my workplace, waiting patiently to speak to me. We talked, and she answered all my questions. If I was ready to end things, she was prepared to fight to save our relationship. At the moment, we remain distant. Trust will take significant effort to rebuild, and I'm not sure where we'll end up. Continuing with my ex-fiancé for a month after these events, I traveled for work. Initially, it was supposed to be a 2-week trip, but it was extended by another 2 weeks. Before leaving, I gave my ex-fiancé a copy of the recording from the therapy session. She had known I recorded it, as it was one of the first things I mentioned when she came to see me at work. Listening to the recording seemed to deeply unsettle her. Her recollection of the session differed significantly from what was on the recording. It appeared she finally understood why I had reacted the way I did. At home, everyone knew about my work trip, and for those weeks, I enjoyed solitude with minimal interference. It was a relief. A few commenters on my initial post suggested meeting for a drink if I was ever in their city. I took one person up on the offer, and to my surprise, they and their spouse were great company, not the awkward encounter I had feared. On the 4th week of my trip, my ex-fiancé visited me. We had stayed in touch during the 3 weeks prior, discussing a wide range of topics, mostly centered on us. One looming issue was our previously planned trip to France, initially intended as a delayed honeymoon. We had non-refundable tickets and reservations, but no relationship to take the trip as originally planned. After much discussion, we decided to go anyway, but as friends. I could already hear the eye rolls. The France trip and its aftermath. France was incredible. Visiting a country like that makes you realize just how medieval the U.S. feels in comparison. Museums there have a way of highlighting just how clumsy American tourists can be. Seriously, our schools should make international etiquette courses mandatory. During the trip, something shifted. We returned as a couple, but not due to any magic of Paris. We still have a long road ahead to rebuild what was lost. We agreed on a few things moving forward. 1. She's looking for a less stressful job. 2. Friends and open marriages are now considered toxic and will no longer be part of our social circle. 3. We both like the name Maylaw, and our first daughter, if we have one, will carry that name. For hiding things like a miscarriage from a partner is unacceptable. I'm still furious about it. 5. We'll get a puppy and a kitten. 6. When we marry, it will be for us. A small ceremony with only close family. We've discussed visiting Italy next. I assume this update isn't as dramatic as some were hoping. Many asked for a continuation, and if you were expecting fury, hatred, or vengeance, I'm sure there's an alternate version of this story where that happens. But as I said from the start, I never hated Mayla. My actions were about self-preservation at the time, reacting to what seemed like a complete betrayal of our shared understanding. Final thoughts on the therapist and the future for those concerned about her mental health. There's no need to worry. Once the influence of the previous therapist dissipated, she largely returned to her usual self. Of course, such events leave their mark, but things are stabilizing. She had once proposed extreme measures: control over finances, her location, and her devices. While I had no interest in living that way, it was clear these were desperate attempts to keep communication open rather than lose contact entirely. We agreed to mutual transparency when it comes to devices, though we've always been open in that regard, so nothing changes there. Financially, we'll continue sharing expenses as we always have. Thank you to everyone who gave valuable advice. Writing these posts was therapeutic and a helpful way to relieve tension.